Welcome to one of the most beautiful chess games ever played, Rubinstein's Immortal. This masterpiece was contested in the Lodz All-Masters tournament on December 26, 1907, between Georg Rotlewi playing white and the legendary Akiba Rubinstein as black. What begins as a quiet Tarrasch defense erupts into one of the most stunning combinations in chess history, featuring a queen sacrifice, a double rook sacrifice, and a mating attack of breathtaking beauty. Kmoch famously called this Rubinstein's Immortal, and once you see the finale, you'll understand why. Georg Rotlewi opens with the queen's pawn, staking a claim in the center and preparing for a classical positional struggle. Rubinstein mirrors with d5, meeting white's central ambitions head-on in the classic queen's gambit territory. Knight to f3, a flexible developing move supporting the d4 pawn and keeping options open. A solidifies the d5 pawn and opens the diagonal for the dark-squared bishop. A very Rubinstein-like move, solid and purposeful. e3, a modest but reliable setup. Rotlewi keeps a restrained pawn center, planning to develop the bishop to d3. c5. Rubinstein immediately strikes at white's center. This is the Tarrasch defense, active, dynamic, and ambitious. c4. Entering a full queen's gambit structure, Rotlewi challenges black's d5 pawn directly. Knight to chix, developing naturally and adding pressure to the d4 square. Both sides are following classical principles. Knight to c3, completing the development of both knights and reinforcing control of the center. Knight to f6, a standard developing move putting pressure on e4 and completing black's minor piece development on the king side. Rotlewi captures on c5, releasing the central tension. This concedes the center and gives Rubinstein a free hand to develop actively. Bishop recaptures on c5, and now black has a beautifully placed bishop on an open diagonal and a strong pawn center. A. Preparing to expand on the queen's side with b4 daughter, a slow plan that gives Rubinstein time to organize his forces. a6. A prophylactic move preventing any nb5 jumps and preparing to meet b4 with the bishop retreat. b4. Gaining space on the queen side and forcing the bishop to make a decision. Bishop retreats to dix, an excellent square. From here it eyes the king side, particularly the h2 pawn, a crucial detail that will matter later. Bishop to b2, fianchettoing on the long diagonal. It looks powerful, but the pawn on e3 limits its scope significantly. Rubinstein castles kingside, tucking the king away safely and connecting the rooks. A textbook approach. Queen to d2, an awkward square. The queen blocks the bishop's development and doesn't contribute much to the position. Queen to a7, a flexible move connecting the rooks and preparing to shift to the king side if needed. Bishop to d3, finally developing the light-squared bishop. It eyes the king side, but the pawn on c4 remains hanging. Rubinstein captures on c4, winning the pawn and forcing white to waste time, recapturing. The position is already slightly better for black. Bishop recaptures on c4, maintaining development, but the bishop will soon be driven back. Beef. A powerful pawn advance, attacking the bishop and gaining queenside space. Rubinstein seizes the initiative. The bishop retreats to d3 again. White has lost 2 tempos with this bishop, a critical factor in the coming attack. Rook to d8, occupying the open file and targeting the white queen. Every black piece is finding its optimal square. The queen slides to e2, again a somewhat passive placement. White is slowly drifting into a defensive position. Bishop to b7, Now the bishop rakes along the long diagonal toward g2, complementing the rook on d8. Rubinstein's pieces are beautifully coordinated. Rotlewi finally castles, but it may be too late. His king goes to the very side where Rubinstein's forces are aimed. Knight leaps to the magnificent f5 outpost. From here it controls key central squares and can jump to g4 or f3, targeting the white king. Rotlewi captures the knight, but this trade opens the bishop's diagonal on f5, pointing directly at the king side. Bishop recaptures on a5 with tremendous power. It now aims at both the h2 pawn and controls the critical long diagonal. The attack is building. Fowler tries to kick the bishop away, but it weakens the kingside pawn structure catastrophically. The Pawn e7 diagonal is now open too. The bishop slides to 7, a deceptive retreat. It now aims directly at h2 through the open diagonal, maintaining all the attacking potential. Fowler, trying to seize the center, but this push leaves critical weaknesses. The pawn on Fowler is now isolated, and the e3 square becomes a hole. Rook to c8, doubling on the c-file and creating immense pressure against the c3 knight. Every black piece is optimally placed for the coming storm. f5 is the critical mistake. Rotlewi pushes forward aggressively, but this pawn advance opens the diagonal for black's b7 bishop and destabilizes the entire position. Bishop check from b6. This forces the white king into the corner, a key prerequisite for the combination that's about to unfold. The king steps to hone, the only legal move. But now the king sits on a dark square diagonal with no escape routes. Knight to g4. A powerful attacking move threatening nx22 and nf2 forks. The knight, bishop pair and rooks are all converging on the white king. Bishop to a4, trying to block the b7 bishop's diagonal and shore up the defense. But it's too late. The storm is about to break. Queen to h4. The queen enters the attack with devastating threats against h2 and g3. White's position is crumbling under the pressure. e3, the only way to deal with the queen's threats. But this fatally weakens the king's shelter and walks straight into Rubinstein's Immortal combination. Rook takes c. The queen sacrifice. Rubinstein's queen is hanging on h4, but he ignores it completely to smash open the position. This is the move that made the game immortal. The rook captures the knight, and if white takes the queen, the dual rook threats become unstoppable. White captures the queen. What else can he do? Rotlewi pockets the queen, but Rubinstein's attack doesn't need it anymore. Rook to d2. The second stunning rook sacrifice. The rook plunges into the second rank, threatening the queen on e2 and setting up a devastating discovered check with the bishop. White is completely paralyzed. The queen captures the rook on d2. Again, there is no choice. But now the diagonal to g2 is blown wide open. Bishop captures on e4 with a discovered check. The bishop on b7 was waiting for exactly this moment. With the e4 bishop removed, the long diagonal from b7 to g2 is completely clear, delivering check to the king on pawn. Queen to g2, the only move to block the check. But Rubinstein has one final exquisite blow prepared. Rook to h3, the coup de grace. This quiet rook move is the ultimate exclamation point. It threatens both rxe2 checkmate, and the queen is unable to move because the bishop on e4 pins it to the king. White is utterly helpless. There is no defense to the dual mating threats. Rubinstein's Immortal is complete. 0-1. And that is Rubinstein's Immortal, a game that will be remembered for as long as chess is played. Rubinstein's queen sacrifice on move 22. The second rook sacrifice on move 23, and a quiet but deadly rook h3 on the final move, threatening both rook takes h2 checkmate and bishop takes g2 checkmate with no possible defense. This is chess artistry at its absolute finest. Akiba Rubinstein proved that even a quiet positional player could produce fireworks that rival any Romantic-era masterpiece. Want to play and improve your own chess? Visit chess99.com. Free, fast, and fun chess for everyone.